Today on the Topping Show, Vivek shut down FBI tweet gets 4 million views in the first 24 hours. Bud Light New Year's tweet gets last year's ratio. Tucker Carlson goes viral for a clip on Epstein's family being unable to get medical documents. Ron DeSantis' DC lease tweet goes viral. Now only 13 electric vehicles qualify for the U.S. tax credit. Mickey Mouse is now in the public domain, and 675,000 cans of formula are being recalled due to a bacteria risk. All of that, much more on The Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Guys say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of January, so if you click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, going over to the business part of the podcast, you have now only 13 EVs qualify for the tax credit in the United States. Now, that'll be for the years 2024, obviously. Now, granted, car companies like to be a little bit unusual with their naming nomenclature, so you'll probably have next year's model number introduced this year and all those kind of weird things. Now, this comes to us thanks to consumerreports.com, or rather .org, but they note that in order to qualify for the new parameters to qualify for the tax credit, which again, tax credit is a pretty penny. Well, granted, a pretty vintage penny, which is actually worth something because it's made of real copper. Modern money, which perhaps is a good metaphor for United States monetary policy, it's 99.999% zinc or 99.99% zinc, which is also known as trash. It's just copper plated, which is why it's garbage. Now, again, that U.S. tax credit, last time I checked, it's, excuse me, the federal tax credit is specifically $7,500. So if you buy one of these boondoggles, you'll get a tax credit of $7,500. You also have a disposable vehicle that won't be worth much and could also be remotely disabled. And for a myriad of reasons, I would never purchase it. But nevertheless, there are some consumers that appreciate the technology. There are a lot of people who are buying them. Now, it looks like the credit is going to depend heavily on where the EVs are not only made, but now their battery components and the minerals of where the batteries come from, and also how much the actually vehicle cost. So they also note that the restrictions may not apply if the EV is leased instead of purchased, which I don't know about that. So I've had a few friends of mine actually lease the new Hyundai electric crossover. I forget the actual name. Granted, it's only has 2 pedals, not 3 pedals, so my interest level precipitously drops. But nevertheless, there are a couple mechanisms that companies are using. Now, granted, it might be played out in the courts on the federal level in terms of how are they getting these numbers to qualify for the tax credits. But the way I've seen it done is that some of these leasing companies are actually able to pass on those savings to consumers in some cases. So it'll be interesting to see, are they going to try to change that around? And it is interesting. I wonder why the government cares, because again, the vehicles are still being purchased, albeit they're being leased. A company is purchasing them. So it is moving the industry artificially with the government incentives. Now, they note that the tax credit is part of the most ironically named piece of legislation in U.S. history, perhaps, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which was hilarious in how much they lied to us in terms of it did the opposite and it caused more inflation. But nevertheless, that's what they called it. And they claim that that act was supposed to address climate change, healthcare, and taxes, which hilariously did none of those things. Now, they also note that the provisions address the EV vehicles tax incentives. They note that vehicles must be manufactured in North America and have an MSRP below $80,000 for an SUV and $55,000 for a sedan, wagon, or hatchback, which is also not great since the U.S. government caused such huge hyperinflation. So the average price of a new vehicle, at least for 2023, I believe is around $54,000. Now, interestingly enough, this also sounds like you will not qualify for the Lucid credits, or if you buy a Lucid vehicle, which is the premium high-end electric car manufacturer, which, I don't know, aesthetically, it just looks like a boring sedan, not worth $250,000, plus you have to pay for the tax, title, registration, all that jazz. So I would never buy one, but some people do appreciate that vehicle. Now they specify that in order to qualify for the first 3,750, a portion of the vehicle's battery components must be produced or assembled in North America. To get the second 3,750, a portion of the critical minerals used in the battery must be extracted or processed in the U.S. or in a country that is in a U.S. free trade agreement partner, or they must have been made from materials recycled in North America. These percentages will go up every year starting in 2024. And they also note that every 2004, which is also when vehicles and components from countries that have been designated, quote, foreign entities of concern will no longer be eligible for the tax credit. Now they also go on to say, starting 2024, eligibility will be determined based on the individual vehicle, not by model. Automakers will submit the vehicle identification numbers of eligible vehicles to the IRS, and only those vehicles will qualify for the tax credit. A Treasury Department spokesperson told Consumer Reports that some VINs within a make and model may be eligible for a tax credit, while other VINs may not. Making it nice, introducing more complexities and nuance. Great job, government. Now, they also note that they claim that none of these regulations apply to leased EVs, so potentially buyers interested in an electric car or plug-in hybrid that isn't eligible for tax credit may want to consider leasing instead of purchasing. Let's see here. So going down to the specific makes and models that we expect some changes. Let's see here. So they note that the Chevy Bolt and Bolt EUV should be eligible for the tax credit. The Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid should be eligible again for the full $7,500 tax credit. Ford F-150 Lightning, they are still reviewing if it'll still be eligible, so heads or tails, not sure yet. The Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring should be eligible for the $3,750 tax credit, which, hilariously enough, because of my background in technology, for a fraction of a second, I immediately thought a Lincoln, well, I guess nowadays, it's not out of the realm of possibility since EVs are basically computers, but I immediately thought Lincoln SUV with like a Corsair computer in it. Corsair makes a lot of aftermarket components, high-end keyboards, RAM for the computers, great fans, cooling. So it's funny they have the Lincoln Corsair. Nevertheless, the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe should be eligible for the $3,750 tax credit. The Jeep Wrangler 4xe should be eligible for, again, the $3,750 credit, which I can't fathom someone buying an electric Jeep. It's happening, don't get me wrong. There's sales, it's not zero. But, again, to get a Jeep, not only is it a Jeep without a V8, which they should all have. I know straight sixes are extremely popular for the platform. But, yeah, to have a Jeep without a stick shift and an internal combustion engine, it's almost like a double negative. It's like, well, what are we even doing? But, nevertheless, some people buy it, allegedly. Never seen one in person. But, nevertheless, they also note that the Rivian R1S and the R1T should qualify for the $3,750 credit as long as the MSRP is under $80,000. Volkswagen told Consumer Report that it's optimistic that 2023-2024 model year ID.4 EVs will be eligible for tax credit under new rules. Who's in charge of marketing at Volkswagen again? I forget. They call it the ID.4 EV, which, I don't know. I'm never a fan of having numerical nomenclature in terms of just pick something cool and creative. At least the Lincoln Corsair made me laugh because it made me think of, putting RAM, a little RAM and, a new CPU cooler into a car, right? It makes you, I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that's ridiculous when some companies will just do letters and numbers instead of an actual model name? I think partially because it's a lot easier on a global scale. You don't have to worry about words changing in meaning as well as being translated differently in other countries, but still. Now I'll go on to what vehicles are losing the tax credit. Now they start off with Tesla is warning its consumers that the rear-wheel drive and long-range versions of the Model 3 will no longer qualify for the $7,500 tax credit, so presumably because, again, those are premium vehicles and the price point would be above the ones that we mentioned earlier, the $80,000, and I believe it is the, $54,000 or $55,000 new price points it needs to hit, or fall under, rather. Oh, yeah, MSRP. Interesting, yeah, MSRP, $80,000, and then for the SUV, and $55,000 for the sedan wagon hatchback. Now, again, going back to the vehicles that are losing their tax credits, they noted that a Nissan spokesperson tells Consumer Reports that the automaker is continuing to work with suppliers to determine the eligibility for the Leaf in 2024, but they don't have additional information, which will be detrimental for the 18 people who want to buy a Nissan Leaf. I mean, it is the biggest joke of electric car. They deserve a modicum of credit for being one of the first major automotive companies to make a large quantity of electric vehicles at a lower price point. But again, it's such a low price point. The materials, the build quality, the design, it's all rudimentary to say the least. It's better than a golf cart, get me wrong. Though, there's something cool about having a golf cart that actually is made by a defense contractor that also makes military vehicles. That is kind of cool. Look into that. It's a real thing. But nevertheless, I guess Nissan's still trying to figure it out. The Cadillac Lyriq and Chevy Blazer EV will temporarily lose eligibility. A spokesperson for General Motors tells Consumer Reports that in early 2024, the Lyriq and Blaze EV will remain eligibility after the changes to where the parts are sourced from, so they need to change those sources. They expect the Chevrolet Equinox EV and Silverado EV and GMC Sierra EV will be eligible at the same time. They note that the Ford Mustang Mach-E will likely lose its federal credit in January, so in a couple weeks. Well, actually not even weeks, it is January, so sometime this month. As will a E-Transit van and the Lincoln Aviator Grand Touring. Interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how many of these companies acquiesce to quickly changing where they get source materials. Because again, that's $7,500. That's a huge incentive to buy an electric vehicle. I would argue it's one of the top reasons people are buying electric vehicles the past maybe 5-10 years, were those huge, ridiculously large tax credits and government incentives that the taxpayer is paying for. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of the day, I mean, will we ever, because again, it's very difficult to actually manufacture vehicles in the U.S., especially sourcing raw materials because of the EPA and a myriad of other reasons. So it'll be interesting to see, again, there are some nuances in the requirements. They can come from allied countries. But at the end of the day, how many of these vehicles are still going to qualify for the $7,500 tax credit? Seems to be perhaps the tides are turning, so to say, and the tax credits won't be there much longer. It'll be interesting to see, but as I always say, time shall tell. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Again, trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of January. So if you click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, leaving a comment is a great way to give me some additional feedback on how I can make the show better and improve myself. Either being a little bit more articulate in my words and not stuttering so much, which if you click the subscribe button subsequently does help a little bit. If you look at the trends, it has worked thus far. And also, leaving a thumbs up is a great way to help with the YouTube and Rumble algorithm, so the videos get shared more and more, so I'd also appreciate that. Also, lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.